From the author of Spinsterella, A Strange and Unusual Romance, comes Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get Spellbound this Halloween in paperback and ebook at online booksellers everywhere. After watching the third presidential debate, I can honestly say we're going to have the first female president of the United States. And I believe that her term is only going to be one term. After watching the third presidential debate, I can look at that debate and say that yes, Donald Trump gave his best performance in a debate, but it still was not strong enough to convince anyone to really believe that he has any sort of chance of winning the election at this point. Because at this point, he's pretty much lost the biggest voter bloc that's out there, and that is women. And with America being 51% women, he does not have enough skills to convince any woman at this point after that whole Access Hollywood debacle that he's pretty much strong enough to be the president of the United States. And then on top of it, he really does not have a pretty solid plan to counter Hillary Clinton's plan. He pretty much got on stage and went on to go into a bunch of ad hominem attacks, interruptions, and he was just too emotional. There were ways of beating Hillary Clinton in that debate and selling his points of why he should be president of the United States, but he did not argue any of those points. And one of the points he should have argued hard on was the fact that she said that her economic plan was going to replicate Barack Obama's plan. Now, he said that the GDP growth for America over the last 8 years has been about 1% or less. And I would have hammered that point hard, and I would have talked about, again, those 20 million unemployed people like myself who have been out of work for the entire term of Barack Obama's presidency. I would have hammered that home, and I would have said to her, after she said that she was going to implement a second round of stimulus, I would have said this to her: how is doing more of the same going to lead to change? Because Barack Obama promised hope and change with his economic stimulus back in 2008, and now here we have 2016, and the American economy is still anemic. So again, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. And this is the point that Trump should have hammered on with Hillary Clinton. Unfortunately, because he's not a seasoned politician and he's too emotional, he didn't hammer that point home in that debate. And I believe if he had hammered that point home, he would have probably gotten people to go to his side. Because if he had sat there and talked about the economy, which is Americans' biggest issue, I mean, again, this is the issue Americans say that is their number one issue, is jobs and the economy, I would have beaten her up on that and said, look, how is doing more of the same going to lead to change? Barack Obama promised people hope and change, again, back in 2008 with his economic stimulus plan. We see that his stimulus plan has not worked. It has only led to 1% GDP growth or less. Meanwhile, China and India have 8% growth and 6% growth at the American people's expense because American companies took all their jobs overseas, and now we have next to no jobs because we have a service-based economy which does not serve the needs of the American people. Again, this is the platform that Trump should have been on, but he did not present it in the proper fashion. Instead, he got into ad hominem attacks and said things like "that evil woman." That's what pretty much put the nails in his coffin. But I look at that, and that should have been one of the points he should have pressed on. The other point he should have pressed on is Hillary Clinton's obsession with Russia. He's always saying that Russia hacked everything and they're trying to fix the election. I would have been coming at her and saying, what would the Russians gain from trying to hack our election? What would they gain from trying to fix the American election? When you look at the sad state of America and the state of America's decline, there is no reason for Vladimir Putin to even think about trying to destroy the American election or fix the American election, because America's doing a very good job of destroying itself. Why would the Russians want to sabotage an American election when you have an America that's in decline, when you have an American economy that is stagnant and in an L-shaped recession similar to the one that has plagued Japan for over 20 years. But she's sitting there saying that the Russians are doing things to us and trying to make the Russians into an enemy so that she can have a reason to try to start something with them to deflect from her poor foreign policy, because that's what this whole Russian argument to me looks like. She's trying to deflect and trying to start something with Vladimir Putin, but I look at Putin's policies, and he's been very effective in dealing with terrorist organizations like ISIL and dealing with the Middle East situation more effectively than Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama with their foreign policy, which has pretty much turned the Middle East into a quagmire. And again, because Donald Trump did not know how to articulate his points and present his argument, he got emotional, and that's what pretty much killed him in that debate. Yes, he gave a strong performance, but he didn't argue the points correctly, and he didn't argue the points in an effective manner. Every point he had made, fell flat because he went into ad hominem attacks. He got emotional. He started interrupting. But Hillary Clinton is a beatable candidate. They just take the right candidate to go against her. And Donald Trump has proven he just isn't the right guy for the job. And the whole sad part of it is we're going to get a grossly unqualified female to be running the United States. And everybody's just better hope, wish, and pray we have a Congress and a Senate that will pretty much, put the brakes on her and turn her into a one-term president so that she doesn't create policies that do inflict devastating damage to the American economy, similar to Barack Obama's Obamacare. Because we look at Obamacare and we look at it objectively, we'll clearly see that that pretty much stalled the economy, because he was telling small businesses and big businesses that it was mandatory for them to have health care. That pretty much cut a lot of companies' hiring costs in half, because where they would go out and hire full-time workers, they just didn't have the money because they were trying to cover the health care of people who they had on staff. So that led to a lot of companies starting to hire part-time workers instead of full-time workers. And a lot of people don't see the damage that Obamacare is doing to the economy. They just think, oh, it's affordable health care. But a lot of businesses just can't afford it. A lot of Americans these days just can't afford it. And this thing is derailing the American economy and needs to be pretty much repealed. A lot of people got out of the whole Affordable Care Act, if they were poor, was one of these Obama phones, and that was just about it. But when it came down to health care, it got worse. So we look at your Barack Obama's Obamacare, which is his legacy, the same legacy that Hillary Clinton says she wants to continue to preserve. And that's a legacy we really need to, strip away from the American economy, because this Obamacare is killing the American economy and it's killing the healthcare industry. It was supposed to help the healthcare industry, but you have companies like Aetna saying that this thing is costing them so much money, they're starting to want to pull coverage because it's killing them. So we look at that policy that Obama pushed through in 2009, before he even signed an unemployment benefits extension, and we see that it's doing serious damage to the economy, because she talks about trying to jumpstart the economy. The best thing you could do to jumpstart this economy would be to repeal Obamacare and then replace it with something a little bit more constructive, like, taking this Medicaid program we already have established and providing that for people who make under $250,000 a year or $100,000 a year. If you want to help people who have issues with low-wage jobs, part-time jobs, and high unemployment receive health care on the regular, that's what you would do, because we already have a Medicaid program, and the Medicaid program is already being paid for. There's no need to bring private companies into this and cost money. If you want to fund people's health care, Medicaid was the way to go. It's the easiest solution. Unfortunately, we got the Affordable Care Act, which is, again, crippling the economy. But this is a point that, again, Donald Trump did not bring up in the debate, and he didn't bring up the right points in the debate to argue. But again, if he had argued the things properly, he would have been able to pretty much try to persuade some of these voters. But at this point, I'm looking at Hillary Clinton, and yes, she may wind up winning the election, but what's going to happen is she's going to be a one-term president overall, because I believe that there are stronger candidates who can, challenge her over the next 4 years. And if she runs into a conservative Republican Senate and a Republican House, they can pretty much do what they did to Barack Obama right to her and put a big block in her way, which pretty much leads to more gridlock if the things go that way. But if she has a complete Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate, it could, again, lead to another Barack Obama mess, but it could be another one-term mess, because what's going to happen is that Barack Obama had both houses and still couldn't get the economy to go. And he still couldn't get the country to go and to change. But we look at, I look at this whole debate, at that debate performance from Trump, and that was his last shot. But again, it just wasn't strong enough, because he wasn't a seasoned politician, and he couldn't articulate the issues in the way the issues needed to be articulated. Now, if I was the guy debating Hillary Clinton, I would have been articulating those points, and I would have been also articulating the point about investing in men, because while many Americans would think of that as sexist, I would explain to America that China invests in its men, India invests in its men, and many other countries invest in their men, and that's how you build an economy, because you want to create that producer-based economy, and that's going to be a long-term investment that's going to pay off for America, because we're not investing in our men. We are, in America, a gynocentric economic state. We've been investing in women for 40 years with a welfare state, and that's why our economy has been flatlining and declining for the last 40 years, because, again, females are consumers, and they spend money. Men are producers, and they spend money to invest in making more money and selling products that can be exported. Now, that would have been the foundation of my, presidential campaign, but I'm not running for president. But from the candidates I see, neither has proven to me that they are qualified to be a president of these United States. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.